is Trump going to Walter Reed on Saturday? I mean, you know, Trump usually goes golfing when he has nothing on his schedule on Saturday. This is the laziest president in history. He spent most of his presidency playing golf or in one of his hotels. So why did Cadet Bone Spurs go to the hospital? I have a theory about this. And I shared this theory on Twitter over the weekend, and, you know, a number of people said, well, yeah, maybe, and a number of people said, no, you're nuts. But, you know, not a lot of people are buying this story that Trump just woke up and said, you know, I'm sitting here in the White House, and down in the basement, there is a fully equipped, essentially emergency room, right? I mean, you know, if he wanted to have some blood drawn to find out what his cholesterol is like, they've got that in the basement of the White House. If he wanted to get an EEG and find out how his heart is doing, they can do that in the basement of the White House. They've got a portable unit. If he wanted to have his blood pressure taken, or if he wanted somebody to listen to his heart, they could do that in the basement of the White House. They've got a clinic, and they've got a full-time 24/7 doctor who basically lives there. I mean, you know, he's completely on call. Trump did not have to leave the White House for anything other than some sort of major medical emergency, or to set up a 25th Amendment way of getting out of being president without being impeached and without committing a crime and without being declared crazy. Let me lay this out for you. I mean, as I said, if he had, you know, people are saying, well, what if he had a minor heart attack? Maybe he did. He could have gone downstairs in the White House and checked it out. Well, maybe he did. Maybe he went to his doctor in the White House, and his doctor looked at the EKG and said, you need to get to the hospital. And by the time he got to the hospital, the situation was resolved. I mean, who knows, right? But here's how it works. The 25th Amendment, has been discussed a lot by Democrats and in the media in the context of the vice president and the cabinet getting together and saying, this guy is nuts and out of control. And therefore, we're going to declare him unfit for office, non-compos mentis, you know, not mentally competent, and recommend that he be removed from office. That's always been a long shot. But the 25th Amendment, while it could provide for that, was actually written in 1965. It was written 2 years after JFK died. And it was to allow for, I mean, you know, the question was, what if Kennedy had been shot, you know, I mean, he was shot in the back and he was shot in the head, right? What if the shot in his back had not killed him? What if it merely knocked him out of service, basically, for a few months while he had to recover? And Lyndon Johnson had to become acting president. Well, we need a system for this. It's not in the Constitution. And so they wrote the 25th Amendment for a physically disabled president. That was the intent. So here's my conspiracy theory, and tell me if you think this is crazy, or if you have an alternative theory. Trump had, I think you could safely say, the worst week of his entire presidency last week. His buddy Roger Stone, his longest political advisor, he's known Roger Stone for 30 or 40 years. Roger Stone was convicted on all counts. And by the way, several of those counts had to do with Roger Stone conspiring with Donald Trump, WikiLeaks, and possibly Russia. So Roger Stone gets convicted of what may be crimes that Trump was involved in. At least that's what the evidence suggests. He had 2 impeachment hearings, right? You had Taylor and Kent, and then you had Yovanovitch. And all of them made it look like Donald Trump is a criminal. When Yovanovitch was testifying, he tweeted an attack on her, thinking that that might take her down a peg over at Fox News. And instead, everybody, including Chris Wallace on Fox News, says, whoa, shouldn't have done that. And he's going, oh, my God, I screwed up again. And then Holmes, this guy who was, you know, at the lunch with Sondland, testifies. He's going to testify this week. He's going to be, you know, one of part of the testimony that we're going to get this week is from Mr. Holmes. And Holmes testifies, you know, right up front and right out loud. Let me see when Holmes is coming. Well, maybe he's not this week. Anyhow, he testified before Congress that, you know, he overheard the call that Trump's right in the middle of this conspiracy. And then Rudy now is looking at a possible criminal indictment himself, and he's denying he did anything. But Lev and Igor are saying, hey, you know, we were working for Trump, not just Rudy. Trump pulled us aside at the Hanukkah party at the White House last year in 2018. So this was, you know, 11 months ago. Donald Trump pulled us aside, Lev and Igor and Rudy, the three of us, and said, I'm going to send you guys on a secret mission to Ukraine to get dirt on Joe Biden. And Lev went on to tell several friends about it. So he's got a documented trail, and there were photos of it. So Trump has this going on, and he's thinking, okay, I'm screwed. How do I get out of the White House without going to jail? Well, the simple way would be to come up with a physical disability, see if they can find anything wrong or make something wrong, or, you know, get the White House doctor to come up with something that he can say is wrong. So he can go to Mike Pence and he can say, you know, Mike, turns out I've got a mitral valve misfunction, and I just can't be president anymore. It's too stressful. It could cause a heart attack. So you need to invoke the 25th Amendment and declare me physically incapable of being president. And then I'll step down if you'll pardon me and the entire Trump crime family, and you get to be president. And I get to leave the White House without ever admitting that I did anything wrong. I'm leaving the White House for the same reason that I was able to get out of the Vietnam War. Back then it was bone spurs, right? Now it's not bone spurs, it's a mitral valve misfunction or whatever, you know, or I've got an artery with a embolism or something. You know, he's going to come up with something. And so he gets to leave without being impeached. He won't go down in history as the guy who was impeached. He'll simply go down in history as the guy who was 73 years old as president, and his age caught up with him, and he just had to leave office. And he and his whole family were entirely part of, you know, Pence will do it the same way Jerry Ford did. Our long national nightmare is over, and so we don't have to dig back into that and keep reliving it every other day. We're going to stop the hearings. We're going to stop the investigations. We're going to stop the indictments because I'm issuing a blanket pardon. Now, in the case of Nixon, Pat Nixon, his wife, and his kids, Trish and, is there another kid? I remember Trish and there was somebody else, were not committing crimes, right? They you know, there wasn't a Nixon crime family, although there were a bunch of guys with Nixon. But in the case of Trump, he's going to have to pardon the whole damn family. What do you think? Am I onto something?